guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about working as a remote medical coder, some things that you should know. If you're brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue, I'm a medical coder. Okay guys, so Friday on my once a month live, I had a viewer ask me about working from home. Do you have to work 8 hours? Do you have to be at your desk the whole time? So I want to talk about some things that you should know when you're working in a remote setting as a medical coder. But the first things first, I'm going to say this. This is my opinion. This is what I know. I have been a veteran coder. This is going to be my 15th year coming up pretty soon. And I am sharing the things that I know based on experience. Number one. Number two, I have nothing to sell you as far as like, oh, you can work at home and I'm trying to sell the field of medical coding. Personally, I think that there's people that are in the medical coding field that should not be in the medical coding field because of their lack of drive when it comes to study, and they just want to collect a check and go home. I don't believe in that, okay? I love what I do, and I want to see strong, smart medical coders. I don't want to see people who get into this just because they think it's something that's so easy and that they can do it from home to take care of their kids. Here's the other thing. When you are working at home, you have to treat it like you are going to the office, meaning that you cannot be logging in and then turning on the laundry, getting the kids fed and off to school and doing all these things and working and having to stop and take care of somebody or having to stop and do this and stop and do that. That's not the way that remote medical coding works. And the most important thing I should say before I really get into it is if you are brand new and you have no experience, you need to be in a facility where you can work with other coders who can help mentor you. Because I guarantee you what you learned in school is not going to prepare you for the real world. Book coding and real world coding are two different things, all right? The book coding, it's written by scholars and people, smart people who are writing things out exactly the way that they need to be there with all of the points and all of the information and all the data. Meanwhile, you get on the outside and it's however these doctors want to document that day. Not all documentation is consistent. Every electronic medical record is going to be different. There are technical issues with electronic records sometimes. So there's going to be a lot of things that are going to happen in the real world. If you are not prepared, meaning that you don't have experience yet, you're not going to understand how these things go. So it is best if you're going to start off, that you start off in a facility. So that way, again, you can be around people who can mentor you. You can have people to ask questions. Because a lot of times when you are working at home, before the pandemic, right? Before the pandemic, you were not getting a call back if you did not have 3 to 5 years experience. Because they want you to be able to work on your own when you are working at home. Because they're not going to have somebody over you to look at you and see what you're doing as far as helping you along the way if you're doing it right or wrong. So when the pandemic hit, we had to do that because that was the nature of what was going on at the time. They still needed medical coders, so we had to figure out a way to make it work. But now that everybody's kind of going back to the facility and everything's kind of somewhat back to normal, it's going back to people need to be in the facility. Some are able to work at home. And if you were able to be in the pandemic and you started your work at home and you're still working at home and you say, Blue, I turned out just fine. I guarantee you there's going to be some things that person can still learn, okay? Because you don't know unless you get around other medical coders. The other thing is that you're going to miss out on building those relationships with providers, because providers don't have to pay attention to your emails. They do not have to pay attention to your queries if you're not around them for them to understand what it is that you want. And just being around the providers and being around the staff is going to really help you in the beginning, especially when you're learning, because then you're going to be able to understand all these things that are happening versus somebody who is just at home, plopped in front of a computer and said, okay, code. And you're like, well, wait a second, where do I go? No one is going to hold your hand. No one. And even if you have people who you can ask questions and they'll train you and they'll help you, That's a very rare instance, but it's not always going to be the norm, okay? It's not always going to be the norm that you're going to have people like that. So that's just something that you need to know. But I want to prepare people for success, and I want new coders to work at the facility first. And that's just my advice anyway. If you don't want that advice, if you don't want to take it, that's fine. Then my channel is probably not for you, just so you know, because I'm here for people who want to learn and who are truly interested in this field. Okay. The other thing that the person was saying was, do you have to be in front of the camera, or do you have to be working the whole time? Some companies, when you're working remotely, will have you have the camera on at all times so they can see you working. Okay. Some companies do not do this because they say it's, oh no, we don't want to do that to the people. But what they will do is other technical surveillance, which is they know every record that you touch, they know how long you have been in that record, and they know what you're doing. They can see every mouse click that you do, every data entry that you put in. They can see everything. So don't think that you can just be like, well, I'm just going to go and take my kids to school for 20 minutes and come back. They're going to see that your computer's been on idle. And even if you have one of those little mouse things that moves the mouse around and things like that, they're still going to see that you didn't data enter anything. So while you may have a green light that's on that says that you're there and available, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually working. Okay, guys, they figured out all of these bugs. They know. They know when somebody is working and when somebody is not working. Obviously, you can have your breaks whenever you're working, and every place is different. Some people, it's, you work 8 hours a day, you get 2 15-minute breaks. So it really all depends on where you're working at, and that you'd have to make sure that you check out with them. But you have to treat working at home like you're working at the office, because it is a privilege to be able to work at home, because then of course you're bypassing all the traffic that you would have to be in if you were actually going to a place. Don't think that working at home absolves you from any workplace drama, because no, it does not. People tend to get a little bit more brave when they're behind a camera. When they're behind a computer. And you see the little trolls out there too. And so it doesn't mean that you're not going to run across any kind of office drama. As somebody who's worked from home remotely twice, I've had 2 experiences. And the first experience I had was really good. It was working for a level 1 trauma hospital. However, there was a lot of drama going on with a couple of the coders, and you could see and sense that energy when we're in meetings and things like that, even though we're doing it remotely. And so that's the thing, you're never going to escape that if that's the reason that you want to stay at home. All right. But it's not about, just like, oh, if I do this many records, I can just get away with it, and I can just do this and I can just do that. They expect you to be working the hours that you say that you're going to be working. Okay, if your day ends at 4:30, you cannot continue to work past 4:30, because then you're working off the clock, and that's wrong, and you can't do that. Okay, unless you're getting paid for overtime. But you can't just be saying, oh, well, I'll just catch up on it later and I'll just do this. They're going to see exactly the timestamp of when you were in that record and what you were doing. So don't make this difficult for yourselves, guys. If you're thinking in your preconceived notion that that's what remote medical coding is, it's not. Guys, you need to treat it with respect. You need to treat it with like, okay, I'm at the office, and you can't be just playing with your kids and running in here, running there. And, I know there's sometimes where people say, well, I asked my boss if it's okay if I run in and run out. Your boss may let you do that once or twice, but if you keep doing it, then you're just abusing that privilege. Right? Of just being able to step away. They're going to make you sign out. They're going to make you clock out because you're not on the clock, right? And that's something that you have to know. The other thing is this has to be a secure internet connection. You cannot just be in the living room willy-nilly with your computer all out. You have to be backed up to a blank wall where no one can see your computer screen. If you have teenagers in the house, they can't be looking at your computer screen. No one can be looking at your computer screen, because then you've committed a HIPAA violation. Just letting anybody willy-nilly look at your screen, can't do that. this information has to be protected in the same way that you would be if you were at a facility. All right. So it's not as easy as you might think. The internet connection has to be secure. A lot of times they will send you equipment. So you'll be working with the computers that they send you. But again, you don't need a printer because you would never need a printer working at home. All right. There's no reason for you to be printing out patient records at home. No reason at all. So that's something that you do need to understand when you're working at home. Everything is on the computer. All right. And that computer has to be secured. It has to be safe at all times. You cannot just take your computer with you and oh, well, I'm going on vacation, but I don't want to put in for leave. So I'm just going to take my computer with me and then I'm just going to connect to Wi-Fi willy-nilly. Well, guess what? When you do that, it doesn't matter where you are. That IT team is going to get a ping that computer is not where it's normally pinging. And it's going to tell them exactly where you're pinging from. And so when it does that, you're going to end up finding yourself without a job, because then you just opened up all those records to potentially being hacked into. And that's people's private information. Now, I'm sure that you would not want your private information just out there, just being carelessly accessed, just because a person can. Okay. So again, if you think you can do this and travel, that's another common misconception, is that people think, oh yeah, I can just connect to Wi-Fi willy-nilly. I can connect to all this internet going all over the place, and I can just travel. That's the thing that people are saying, that they want to get into an RV and travel all over, and oh, I want to work at the beach. Oh, no. You're not going to sit there and work at the beach, okay, and be able to access all this and do coding, because you have to be able to pay attention. You have to be able to look at what you're doing, again, and you have to be in a secure place. So unless your house faces the ocean and you can be looking out at the ocean, then that's something completely different. But if you're thinking that you can just be, in an RV and just roaming around all over the place, connecting to Wi-Fi and accessing these patient records, you're setting yourself up to fail. Because again, that's putting patient records at risk, and that's putting patient information at risk. And again, HIPAA violation, HIPAA violation, HIPAA violation. So you don't want to go through any of that. Work at a facility. It doesn't matter why you want to work remotely. Work at the facility. If you're saying because you want to spend time with your kids, if you're spending more time with your kids than you are working, you're not going to be able to meet productivity. You're not going to be able to concentrate enough to be able to meet accuracy either. Okay? There's tons of parents that have done this and their kids were little. When I got here to my forever home, for coding, I got here and a lot of the ladies had little kids, like 2-3 years old. And now they're all out of high school, going to college and things like that. But they had little kids and they still managed to make it work, so it's however you have to do it. Sometimes people will write me and say, well, Blue, I don't have money for childcare. Guys, there's plenty of programs out there. So it's really just about being resourceful and looking up those programs. But there's a lot of people that want stuff just spoon-fed to them. And guys, it's not the way that it is. If you have a issue like childcare, okay, so now we got to figure this childcare issue out. There's a lot of resources out there, again, that can help you with that. So that's just something that you ought to know, guys. It's not easy. This is not an easy field to study. It's not an easy field to get into. Once you get in, then you're okay. And then once you get experience, then yes, you can work at home. Yes, you can apply for jobs where you can work remotely, right? And that's okay when you do that. If you are getting hired on, also, listen to this. If you are getting hired on and they say, okay, well, this is a remote position, but we want to train you at our facility for a month or 2 months, and then we'll send you home. That's great. Now that I can get on board with, because that is going to get you to be around as a new medical coder, get you to be around the people, and so then that way you can ask questions, and it's not going to be so scary once you get in at home, So that's something that is a possibility. If that's the way that it is in your area, then that's okay. But don't let it be that okay, this is a deal breaker because I'm not getting hired remotely. Guys, you can't get your feelings hurt if you don't get hired remotely. A lot of places want new medical coders to have experience before they get to work at home. Okay. And I'm somebody that's telling you this without any bias. I'm not trying to sell a school or a program. People who try to sell schools and programs are the ones who say, oh yeah, don't listen to her. Yeah, you can work remotely. And then they find out it's something completely different than what they expected. Okay, so again, I'm just about being honest with you guys. And I want you all to know that this is what you're up against if you are out there actively looking for a remote medical coding job and you're brand new. Okay. And again, you're not going to have people who are right there to, be on you and look at you, but they will be able to see your movements on the computer. They will be able to track those things. And if you are saying stuck in a record, meaning that you spent 45 minutes on an appendectomy that should have took you less than 5 minutes to code, then they're going to ask you, because they can do audits all the time of how long it's taking you to code these charts. Some they will see, okay, there was multiple diagnoses, multiple procedures. It makes sense that they were in here for 45 minutes. But this one, it was an appendectomy with appendicitis, and you took 45 minutes to do that. What happened here? And they have every right to question you. Okay, again, because if you leave your desk area and you go and you run out and you go do errands and things like that, you're stealing time. You're stealing time. And so again, that's not a good thing to do, so that's just something that you ought to know. It's not as easy as people make it out to be. It's not as glamorous as people make it out to be, because you get lonely too. You're by yourself. And for some people that's a dream, because they say, well, I don't want to be around my coworkers. And I understand that. Everybody does at some point. But in the beginning, when you're learning medical coding, it shouldn't be that you are trying to work at home. You should need to be at the facility. And that's just my advice. I will always say that. That will always be my stance on this channel, is that new medical coders need to be at the facility so they can get that exposure to the providers before they start working at home. Now, if you have experience working at home, can be great. You can just be at the meetings. They sometimes they have like Zoom meetings or whatever. Sometimes they meet on Teams, and they have you on camera and things like that. Sometimes they will have you go into the facility once a month, or every quarter or so, to have meetings and things like that. So it really all depends on where you're working. So that's just something that you ought to know. But yes, that's my video for today. Those are just some of the things. When I hear comments like that, like, are we just supposed to be at the computer, and are we working 8 hours a day? I mean, it really all depends on, what the facility has set up. They're going to want you to be there working when their providers are there, though. Sometimes people will think that, oh, I can just do this in the graveyard shift. I can do third shift for this, and I can do, no, because again, unless that's an okay thing with that company, they're going to want you to be available to providers. And if they want to even ask you questions, then you need to be available. Okay. The same thing if the headquarters is in a different time zone, they're going to want you to work based on that time zone. All right. So if your company is based on the East Coast and you are out on the Pacific Coast, that's going to be quite a difference in time. But they will let you know that. They will let you know what your work schedule would be like. Don't ask me, guys, because I don't know. Every place is different, But I do know that if you are working at home, you have to treat it like you're going to the office. You do have to get up, get dressed, and, get yourself in that mindset of being at work. A lot of people, especially during the pandemic, they were like, well, I can just roll out of bed and, not even get dressed. But that doesn't get you in the mindset of working. And I think that it does do something to us when we spend an extended amount of time like that. I'm just saying. So that's my advice anyway. But if this video helped you, please like, subscribe, and share. And I will see y'all next time. Bye.